I've taken thousands of photographs, won 3 awards, had my work published in Life, Look, Time, the New York Times, been to 7 wars on 4 continents, documented death in all its forms, sudden, slow, violent, quiet. My photographs have changed policy, ended careers, started investigations. But there's one photograph I never published, never showed anyone, never even developed. It's still in my camera, the film still in the canister, locked in a safe in my apartment. That photograph, the last one I ever took, that's the one that ended my career. That's the one that broke me. My name is Michael Brennan. I was a war photographer from 1961 to 1971. 10 years of conflict, chaos, death. I covered the Bay of Pigs, the Congo crisis, the Six-Day War, the troubles in Northern Ireland, and Vietnam, always Vietnam. I went back 7 times, couldn't stay away. The war was the story of our generation, and I was determined to document it, to show the truth, to make people see what we were doing. I'm telling this in 1983, 12 years after I took that last photograph. 12 years of not picking up a camera. 12 years of trying to forget what I saw through the viewfinder. 12 years of living with the knowledge that sometimes bearing witness isn't enough. Sometimes you have to choose between documenting and helping, between observer and participant, between photographer and human being. I grew up in Brooklyn. My father was a newspaper editor. My mother taught high school English. I had one younger sister, Rebecca. We were middle class, comfortable, educated, books everywhere, dinner table conversations about politics and art and the world's problems. My parents believed in engagement, in paying attention, in using your voice to speak truth to power. I got my first camera at 14, a used Leica my father bought from a retiring photographer at his paper. Spent the next 4 years learning everything I could. Shot the streets of New York. Documented the poverty, the violence, the beauty. Got good enough that by the time I was 18, I was selling photos to local papers. I attended NYU, studied journalism, but the classroom felt claustrophobic. The real stories were out there. In 1961, I dropped out and convinced Life magazine to send me to Cuba. The Bay of Pigs invasion was happening. They needed photographers. I was young, cheap, expendable. They said yes. That was my first war. I was 20 years old, hiding in a ditch while Cuban soldiers and CIA-backed exiles killed each other around me. I shot 3 rolls of film. 1 photograph, a wounded exile soldier being carried by his comrades, the exhaustion and desperation clear on their faces, made the cover of Life. I was hooked. War photography became my calling. The adrenaline, the importance, the feeling that you were documenting history as it happened. Robert Capa, the great war photographer, had said, "If your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough." I took that to heart. Got close. Closer than safe. Closer than smart. But I got the shots. The Congo in 1963. Israeli tanks in the Sinai in 1967. Belfast in 1969. Watching British soldiers patrol streets that looked like war zones. Each conflict taught me something about human nature. About what we're capable of. About how thin the line is between civilization and savagery. But Vietnam was different. Vietnam was America's war, our boys, our bombs, our body count. And the American public needed to see it, needed to understand what we were doing in their name. I first went to Vietnam in 1965. Spent 3 months embedded with Marines near Da Nang. Shot combat operations, village searches, wounded being evacuated. The photographs were good, honest. Showed both the courage and the brutality. Life published a spread, 6 pages. The Face of War in Vietnam by Michael Brennan. I went back in 66, 67, 68. Each time I stayed longer. Each time I got closer to the action. Each time I documented something that made people uncomfortable. That made them question. That made them angry. My photograph of a burned village, nothing left but ashes and one old woman sitting in the ruins, helped fuel the anti-war movement. My photograph of a young Marine, face covered in mud and blood, 1,000-yard stare, became an iconic image of the war's psychological toll. My photograph of South Vietnamese police executing a Viet Cong prisoner. That one I still see in textbooks. I was good at what I did, maybe too good. I'd learned to separate myself from what I was photographing, to see through the viewfinder without feeling, to document horror without being consumed by it. That's the photographer's trick. Emotional distance. You're an observer, not a participant. You record. You don't intervene. Robert Capa also said something else. The war photographer's most fervent wish is to be unemployed. I never understood that quote. Not until 1971, not until that last photograph. I went back to Vietnam in January 1971. The war was winding down. American troops were being withdrawn. Vietnamization was underway, training South Vietnamese forces to take over the fighting. The American public had turned against the war. The protests were massive. Kent State had happened. The Pentagon Papers were about to drop. The war was lost. Everyone knew it. But we were still fighting, still dying, still killing. I wanted to document the endgame, the final days of American involvement, the handover to the South Vietnamese, the beginning of the end. I was 40 years old, 10 years of war photography, 10 years of death through a viewfinder, 10 years of emotional distance and professional detachment, 10 years of believing that documenting mattered more than anything else. I was wrong, and I was about to learn exactly how wrong. I arrived in Saigon in late January. The city was different from my previous visits, quieter, more tense. The Americans were leaving. Everyone could feel it. The South Vietnamese knew they were about to be abandoned. The North Vietnamese knew they were about to win. And the American soldiers who were still there knew they were fighting a war their country had already given up on. I linked up with a unit from the 101st Airborne, one of the last major American combat formations still operating. They were running patrols near the Cambodian border, trying to interdict NVA supply lines. Dangerous work, pointless work, really, given that we were leaving anyway. But they did it because those were their orders. The unit commander was a captain named Daniel Morrison, West Point graduate, second tour in Vietnam. He'd seen his share of combat, had the look, that hardness in the eyes, that economy of movement, that way of speaking that soldiers develop when they've been in the shit too long. Mr. Brennan, he said when I introduced myself, I know your work. You took that photo of the Marine at Khe Sanh, the one with the 1,000-yard stare. That's right. That was my platoon. I was the lieutenant. The Marine in your photo was one of my men, Lance Corporal David Wells. He killed himself 3 months after that photo was taken. Blew his brains out in the barracks. I didn't know what to say. I'd taken thousands of photographs, never knew what happened to most of the subjects after the shutter clicked, never followed up, never checked, just documented and moved on. I'm sorry, I said. Not your fault. War killed him, not your camera. But I want you to understand something. These men you're photographing, they're not symbols. They're not metaphors. They're people. They have names, families, futures, or they should have. Remember that. I will. He assigned me to Alpha Company, 3rd Platoon, about 30 men. Mix of veterans on their 2nd or 3rd tours and new guys just arrived in country. The veterans were counting days until they went home. The new guys were trying to survive long enough to become veterans. And everyone was angry. Angry that they were still here, still fighting, still risking their lives for a war that was already lost. We headed out on patrol February 3rd, standard search and destroy operation. Move through the jungle, look for NVA, engage if found, return to base. I'd been on dozens of these patrols, knew the rhythm, the boredom punctuated by terror, the hours of walking followed by seconds of chaos. I carried my camera, a Nikon F, standard equipment for war photographers, 2 extra lenses, 10 rolls of film, a notebook, and that was it, no weapon. War photographers don't carry weapons. You're a non-combatant, protected under the Geneva Convention. Though the NVA didn't always respect that distinction, the men were professional, moved well, maintained discipline, stayed alert. But you could feel the tension, the knowledge that every patrol could be your last, the resentment that they were still here while the politicians who'd sent them were planning the withdrawal. A private, couldn't have been more than 19, walked next to me. Kid from Tennessee named Bobby Jackson. He'd been in country for 2 months. You're the photographer, right? From Life magazine? That's right. You've been to Vietnam before? 6 times before this. Jesus, why do you keep coming back? Good question. Why did I keep coming back? The obvious answer, it was my job. Document the war, show the truth. But that wasn't the whole truth. Part of me was addicted to the adrenaline, to the importance, to the feeling that what I was doing mattered. Someone has to document this, I told him. Someone has to show people what's really happening. You think your photos change anything? Sometimes. Maybe. I don't know. My mom saw one of your photos, the one with the burned village. She wrote me a letter saying maybe I was fighting for the wrong side, that maybe the Vietnamese didn't want us here. He looked at me. You think that? You think we're the bad guys? What do you say to that? I documented atrocities on both sides, seen American soldiers commit war crimes, seen the VC do worse. War brings out the worst in everyone. There are no good guys, just degrees of bad. I think war makes everyone into something they're not, I finally said. I think good people do terrible things, and I think you're doing your duty the best you can. That's all anyone can ask. He nodded, seemed to accept that, but I could see the doubt in his eyes, the questioning. The beginning of the moral crisis that would define Vietnam veterans for decades. We patrolled for 3 days, saw no enemy, found some old bunkers, a cache of weapons, evidence of NVA movement, but no contact. Just walking through jungle in oppressive heat, waiting for something to happen. On the 4th day, February 7th, something happened. We were moving through a valley, thick jungle on both sides, following a stream. Classic ambush terrain. Everyone knew it. The point man was extra alert. The platoon sergeant kept the spacing tight. Captain Morrison was on the radio, ready to call for support if needed. The ambush came at 14:30 hours. The NVA had set up on both sides of the valley, waited until we were in the kill zone, then opened up with everything they had. Machine guns, RPGs, small arms. The valley erupted in gunfire. I hit the ground, training and instinct. Get down, find cover, assess the situation. Around me, soldiers were returning fire, trying to locate the enemy positions. The noise was overwhelming, bullets cracking overhead, explosions, shouting, screaming. I pulled out my camera. This was what I did. Document. Even in the middle of an ambush, especially in the middle of an ambush, this was my job. I started shooting. A soldier firing his M16. Another dragging a wounded man to cover. Medic running forward through the fire. The fight lasted maybe 15 minutes. Felt like hours. The NVA broke contact first, melted back into the jungle. We'd taken casualties, 3 wounded, none killed. Light, considering. The medic was patching them up, calling for medevac. I'd shot 2 rolls of film, good photographs, intense. showed the chaos, the courage, the fear. This was what people needed to see. This was what made the war real. We secured a landing zone for the medevac chopper. The wounded were loaded aboard. The rest of us prepared to move out. Captain Morrison wanted to get out of that valley before the NVA came back. That's when we heard the crying. It was coming from the jungle, maybe 50 yards off the trail. A child crying. High-pitched, desperate, terrified. Everyone froze. Could be a trap, the platoon sergeant said. VC use kids as bait. We go investigate. They ambush us. Or it's a kid who got caught in the crossfire, Morrison said. We can't just leave them. Sir, we need to move. The NVA could be regrouping. Morrison hesitated. The decision calculation every combat officer makes. Mission versus morality. Safety versus conscience. He made his choice. Jackson, Williams, come with me. Rest of you, security perimeter. We check it out, 5 minutes max. Bobby Jackson, the kid from Tennessee, was chosen. He looked terrified but didn't argue. That's what you did. Followed orders. I followed too. Not part of the team, but I couldn't help myself. This was the story. This was what I needed to document. We moved carefully through the jungle. Morrison on point, rifle ready, Jackson and Williams behind him. Me bringing up the rear with my camera. We found the source of the crying, a girl, maybe 8 years old, Vietnamese. She was sitting against a tree covered in blood. Not wounded, at least not that we could see, but covered in someone else's blood. Her mother, maybe, or her father. Someone who'd been killed in the ambush or the fighting that had happened here. She saw us and started crying harder. Terrified. We were Americans. We had guns. For all she knew, we'd killed her family. Morrison lowered his rifle, held up his hands. It's okay. We're not going to hurt you. We're here to help. She didn't understand English. Kept crying, pressed herself against the tree like she could disappear into it. Morrison looked at Jackson. See if you can calm her down. Williams, check the area. Make sure we're alone. Jackson approached slowly, talking softly. Hey there. It's okay. We're the good guys. We're going to help you. He had a candy bar in his pocket. Most soldiers carried them for situations like this, building rapport with kids. He held it out. The girl looked at the candy, then at Jackson, then at the candy again. Slowly, she reached out and took it. I raised my camera. This was the shot. American soldier comforting Vietnamese child, showing the human side of the war, showing that we weren't monsters, that we cared. This was the photograph that would run in Life magazine. This was the photograph that would remind people why we were here, or why we thought we were here. I looked through the viewfinder, framed the shot. Jackson kneeling, the girl holding the candy, tentative trust beginning to form, perfect composition, good light filtering through the jungle canopy. This was going to be powerful. Then I saw the blood, not on the girl, behind her. A trail of blood leading deeper into the jungle, fresh blood, still wet. And next to the girl, partially hidden by the tree, something else, a rifle, a K-47, Vietnamese, not VC, NVA, regular army. I lowered my camera, looked at the blood trail, looked at the rifle, started to understand. Captain, I said, I think... The NVA soldier came out of the jungle behind us. He'd been hit, wounded in the ambush, but still mobile, still armed. He was young, maybe 20, and he was pointing his AK-47 at Jackson's back, 10 feet away. Couldn't miss. Everything slowed down, the way it does in moments like this. I could see every detail. The soldier's finger on the trigger, the blood soaking his uniform, the fear and determination in his eyes. He was wounded, probably dying, but he was going to take one of us with him. Jackson had his back to him, was focused on the girl, didn't know he was about to die. Morrison was turning, bringing his rifle around, but he wasn't fast enough. The NVA soldier was already firing. I could have documented it, could have raised my camera and taken the photograph. The moment of death, the bullet striking, the look on Jackson's face as he realized what was happening. That would have been the photograph. That would have been the career-defining shot, the Pulitzer winner, the image that defined the war. But I didn't raise my camera. I moved, without thinking, without planning, just moved. Threw myself at Jackson, knocked him sideways. The bullets hit me instead. The impact was like being hit with a sledgehammer. 3 rounds. One hit my camera, destroyed it. One hit my chest, stopped by the film canisters in my pocket, saved my life. One hit my left shoulder, went through clean. I went down. Pain exploded through my body. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Just pain and shock and the realization that I'd been shot. Morrison finished turning, fired. 3-round burst. The NVA soldier went down, dead before he hit the ground. Williams was there too, firing, making sure. But it was already over. Jackson was on the ground next to me. Unhurt. Alive because I'd knocked him out of the way. He was staring at me, shocked. Jesus Christ, you saved my life. You saved my fucking life. Morrison was already on me, checking the wounds. Medic, M-E-D-I-C exclamation mark. He was ripping open my shirt, looking for damage. You're okay. Shoulder wound, through and through. That's gonna hurt like hell, but you'll live. That film canister, Jesus, that thing saved your life. Bullets embedded right in it. The medic arrived, started patching me up. Bandages, morphine, pressure to stop the bleeding. I was going into shock. Everything was fuzzy, distant, like watching it happen to someone else. The girl was still there, still crying, still covered in blood that wasn't hers, still terrified. The NVA soldier, probably her father or uncle or brother, was dead on the ground. Killed trying to defend her. Killed because he'd been protecting a child. Killed by us. By me, indirectly, because I'd intervened. Jackson picked her up, held her. She was crying into his shoulder now. He was crying too. Thank you, he kept saying to me. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. You could have died. I should have died. That was the thought running through my morphine-hazed mind. I should have died. I'd broken the cardinal rule of war photography. I'd intervened. I'd participated. I'd stopped being an observer and become part of the story. And I'd killed my camera in the process. They medevaced me out. Helicopter to a field hospital, then to Saigon, then to Clark Air Base in the Philippines, surgery to repair the shoulder, antibiotics for the infection that was already starting, pain medication, rest. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. Visitors came, other journalists, soldiers I'd photographed over the years. Captain Morrison visited once, told me Jackson was okay. The girl had been evacuated to an orphanage in Saigon, told me I was a hero. I didn't feel like a hero, I felt like a fraud. 10 years of war photography, 10 years of maintaining professional distance, 10 years of documenting without intervening, and I'd broken, thrown it all away in one moment of weakness or strength. I couldn't tell which. My editors at Life sent a telegram. Heard what happened. Glad you're alive. Come home when you're recovered. You've earned a break. But I didn't want a break. I wanted... what? To go back, to keep photographing, to prove I could still do the job. But my camera was destroyed. And something else was destroyed too. That distance, that detachment, that ability to see through the viewfinder without feeling. It was gone. And I didn't know if I wanted it back. The doctors cleared me to travel in early March. I flew back to the States, landed at Travis Air Force Base in California. My sister Rebecca met me there. She'd driven from Los Angeles. Hadn't seen her in 2 years. She hugged me carefully, mindful of my shoulder. Looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. Michael, you look terrible. I got shot. Tends to make you look bad. That's not what I mean. You look haunted. What happened over there? I stopped being a photographer. Became a person instead. Turns out that's harder. She didn't understand. How could she? She wasn't there. Hadn't looked through that viewfinder for 10 years. Hadn't trained herself to see death without feeling it. Hadn't built that wall between observation and emotion. Hadn't watched that wall crumble in one moment. We drove back to Los Angeles. She'd set up a room for me in her apartment. Stay as long as you need, she said. Recover. Rest. Figure out what's next. What was next? That was the question. I was a war photographer who couldn't photograph war anymore, who couldn't maintain the distance required, who'd thrown himself in front of a bullet instead of documenting the death. What did that make me? I tried to work, tried to get back to photography. Life magazine offered me assignments, domestic stories, human interest pieces, nothing dangerous. I accepted one, a photo essay on returning Vietnam veterans. Should have been easy, should have been important, should have been right in my wheelhouse. I couldn't do it, couldn't raise the camera, couldn't look through the viewfinder. Every time I tried, I saw that moment in the jungle, saw Jackson's back, saw the NVA soldier raising his rifle, saw the choice I'd made. I'd talk to the veterans, hear their stories, see the pain in their eyes, the struggle to readjust, the invisible wounds, and I'd think, I should photograph this. This is important. This is what people need to see. But then I'd think about David Wells, the Marine from Khe Sanh, the one whose photograph I'd taken, who'd killed himself 3 months later. I'd documented his pain, made it public, made him a symbol, and he'd killed himself. Had my photograph contributed to that? Had I taken something from him by photographing his worst moment? Had I turned his suffering into content, his pain into art? I'd always believed that documenting mattered, that bearing witness was enough, that showing the truth would change things. But what if I'd been wrong? What if all I'd been doing was exploiting suffering for career advancement? What if I was just a vulture with a camera feeding on trauma? I couldn't finish the assignment. Told life I needed more time. They were understanding. Take all the time you need, Michael. You've been through a lot. But time didn't help. Weeks turned into months. My shoulder healed, but I didn't. Couldn't pick up a camera without my hands shaking. Couldn't look at my old photographs without feeling sick. Couldn't reconcile what I'd been with what I'd become. In June, Bobby Jackson found me. He'd gotten my address somehow, tracked me down, showed up at Rebecca's apartment. Mr. Brennan, I had to see you, had to thank you in person. He looked different, still young, but harder, more tired. The war had aged him in the few months since I'd seen him. You're home, I said. Finished my tour, got out, alive, thanks to you. How are you doing? He shrugged. Okay, I guess. Having trouble sleeping, having trouble with a lot of things. But I'm alive. That's because of you. I'm glad. I brought you something. He reached into his bag and pulled out a camera, a Nikon F. I know yours got destroyed, so I bought you a new one. Figure you need to keep taking pictures. The world needs to see what you see. I looked at the camera. State of the art. Expensive. He probably spent his entire savings on it. Bobby, I can't accept this. Please, I need you to. I need to know that what happened meant something, that you saving my life had a purpose. You're a great photographer. You have to keep doing the work. I took the camera, felt the weight of it, the familiar shape, the potential of it. Bobby was smiling, proud, happy to give me this gift, and I knew I'd never use it. Thank you, I said. This means a lot. He left happy. Thought he'd done something good. Thought he'd helped me get back to work. Didn't know he'd given me a burden I couldn't carry. The camera sat on my shelf for a month. I'd look at it every day, think about picking it up, think about loading film, think about going out and shooting. But I couldn't. The gap between thinking and doing was unbridgeable. In July, I had a dream, more like a nightmare. I was back in Vietnam, back in that jungle, looking through my viewfinder. But this time I didn't move, didn't throw myself at Jackson, just kept photographing, documented his death, got the perfect shot, the bullet striking, the look on his face, the moment of death. And in the dream, I was happy, satisfied. I'd gotten the shot, the career-defining photograph, the Pulitzer winner. I woke up screaming. Rebecca came running, found me sitting on the floor, crying. I'm a monster, I kept saying. I'm a fucking monster. You're not. You saved someone's life. But I wanted the photograph. In the dream, I wanted the photograph more than I wanted him to live. What does that make me? She didn't have an answer. How could she? I didn't have an answer either. That's when I knew I was done. Done with photography. Done with war. Done with documenting suffering while pretending it didn't affect me. Done with the whole thing. I took Bobby's camera, loaded it with film, went out to the beach, watched the sunset. Beautiful light, golden hour, perfect conditions for photography. I raised the camera, looked through the viewfinder, saw the sun sinking into the ocean, saw the colors, saw the composition, saw the photograph. And I pressed the shutter. One shot, one photograph, the last one I'd ever take. Then I lowered the camera, didn't wind the film, didn't take another shot, just lowered it and walked home. That photograph is still in the camera. Film never developed, locked in a safe in my apartment. My last photograph as a photographer, a sunset, beautiful and meaningless, the opposite of everything I'd spent 10 years documenting. I never took another photograph, never touched a camera again after that day. The camera Bobby gave me, it sits in that safe with the undeveloped film still inside, a monument to what I was, what I couldn't be anymore. Life magazine was understanding. They'd paid me well over the years. I'd earned enough to live on for a while, especially if I was careful. They offered to keep me on staff, do editing work, mentor young photographers. I declined. Couldn't be around it anymore. Couldn't be reminded of what I'd lost, or thrown away, or escaped from. I still don't know which. I tried other things. Taught English for a while, worked in a bookstore, did carpentry, found a kind of peace in manual labor, in doing something concrete, something that didn't involve documenting other people's suffering, something that created instead of captured. The nightmares continued, not just the one about Jackson, others too, all the people I'd photographed over the years, all the deaths I'd documented, all the suffering I'd turned into art. They'd visit me at night, ask me why I'd photographed them instead of helping them, why I'd stolen their pain for my career, why I'd hidden behind a camera instead of being human. I tried therapy. The therapist said I had moral injury. It's common in people who've witnessed trauma, she explained. You've been exposed to suffering for so long, maintained emotional distance for so long that when that distance collapsed, you couldn't rebuild it. And now you're questioning everything you did before. Was I wrong? I asked. Was I wrong to photograph instead of help? That's not for me to answer. But I'll say this. Bearing witness is a form of help. Documentation matters. Your photographs changed policy, changed perceptions, maybe saved lives by turning public opinion against the war. But I didn't save David Wells, the Marine at Khe Sanh. I photographed his suffering and he killed himself. You didn't kill him. The war killed him. Your photograph just documented what the war had done. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd helped more than I'd hurt. Maybe documentation mattered. But I couldn't make myself believe it anymore. Couldn't make myself pick up a camera again. I got letters from Bobby Jackson over the years. He'd gotten married, had kids, built a life. I think about you every day, he wrote. I think about how I'm alive because you chose to be human instead of a photographer. How you gave up your camera to save my life. That means everything to me. I named my son Michael, after you. I hope that's okay. It was okay, more than okay. It helped a little. Knowing that my choice had meant something, that Bobby was alive and building a life, that Michael Jackson Jr. existed because I'd thrown myself in front of a bullet. But it didn't make me pick up a camera again. Rebecca worried about me. Michael, you need purpose. You need work. You can't just drift forever. I'm not drifting. I'm healing. Are you? It's been 12 years. You're still having nightmares. Still avoiding anything related to photography. Still carrying guilt about things you couldn't control. She was right. I wasn't healing. I was just existing. Going through the motions. Waiting for something that would never come. Forgiveness, peace, redemption. I went to a Vietnam veterans gathering once. Thought maybe I'd find something there. Solidarity, understanding, shared experience. I'd covered the war but not fought it, documented the suffering but not endured it. Was I a veteran? Did I have a right to be there? An old Marine recognized me. You're Michael Brennan, the photographer. I saw your work. That photo of the Marine at Khe Sanh. That was powerful stuff. Thank you. You still shooting? No. Haven't touched a camera in 12 years. Why not? You were one of the best. How do you explain? How do you tell someone that you stopped being able to look at the world through a lens? That you couldn't separate observation from participation anymore? That the distance required to be a great photographer had become the distance that made you less human? I got too close, I finally said. Couldn't maintain the separation anymore. He nodded, like he understood. Yeah, that's what the war did to a lot of us. Got too close, saw too much, can't unsee it. Maybe I was a veteran after all, not of combat, but of bearing witness, of carrying the weight of what I'd seen, of being changed by it in ways that could never be undone. I think about that last photograph sometimes, the one still in the camera, the sunset. I wonder what it would look like developed, if it was properly exposed, if the composition was good, if it was worth anything. But I'll never develop it, never know. Because opening that camera, removing that film, would mean acknowledging that it's over, that I'm not a photographer anymore, that I'll never be a photographer again. As long as that film stays in the camera, I can pretend. Pretend I'm just taking a break. Pretend I'll get back to it someday. Pretend I haven't given up the thing that defined me for 10 years. People ask me sometimes, former colleagues, old friends, why I quit. You were at the top of your game, they say. You had years left in you. Why walk away? I tell them about getting shot, about the injuries, about needing time to recover. They accept that. It's easier than the truth. The truth is, I didn't walk away. I ran. Ran from the realization that I'd been hiding behind a camera for 10 years. using documentation as an excuse not to feel, not to help, not to be human. I'd told myself I was bearing witness, that I was showing the truth, that I was making a difference. But in that moment in the jungle, when I saw Bobby Jackson about to die, all of that fell away. And I realized I'd rather save one life than document 1,000 deaths. I'd rather be human than be a great photographer. Robert Capa's other quote, "The war photographer's most fervent wish is to be unemployed. I understand it now. 12 years too late, but I understand. We don't want war. We don't want suffering. We don't want the things we document to exist. We just want to live in a world where our cameras can gather dust because there's nothing terrible to photograph anymore." I'm 52 years old now. Bobby Jackson's son, my namesake, is 11, still sending me school photos, updates on his life. A life that wouldn't exist if I'd chosen differently. If I'd been a photographer instead of a person, was it worth it? Trading my career for his life? Trading 10 years of documentation for one moment of intervention? Every time. Every single time. But I still wonder about all the other moments, all the other photographs I could have taken, all the other truths I could have documented, all the policy changes, opinion shifts, awareness raised. Did I help more by photographing or by stopping? I don't know. We'll never know. That's what I live with. The uncertainty, the questions that have no answers. My camera sits in a safe, film undeveloped, a monument to the photographer I was and the person I became. The last photograph I ever took locked in darkness, never seen, never shared. Just like the photographs in my mind, all the images I can never unsee, never escape, never develop into anything but nightmares. I've taken thousands of photographs, won 3 awards, changed policy, started conversations, documented history. But the photograph I'm proudest of is the one I didn't take. The moment I lowered my camera and threw myself in front of a bullet. The moment I chose to be human instead of a photographer. That was my best shot. And nobody will ever see it. Because the best photographs are the ones you don't take. The moments you experience instead of document. The lives you save instead of capture. The humanity you preserve instead of expose. Robert Capa died taking photographs in 1954. Stepped on a landmine in Vietnam while documenting French colonial war. Killed by his commitment to getting close enough for the good shot. I almost died the same way. But I chose differently. Chose life over documentation. Chose being present over being a witness. Chose the person over the photographer. I haven't touched a camera in 12 years. Won't touch one for the rest of my life. But I'm alive. Bobby Jackson is alive. His son Michael is alive. That's 3 lives that wouldn't exist if I'd made the other choice. If I'd taken that photograph instead of saving that soldier. 3 lives versus 1 career. I made the right choice. But I still miss the camera sometimes. Still feel the phantom weight of it around my neck. Still see photographs in my mind. Compositions, light, moments that would have been perfect to capture. I just don't capture them anymore. I just live them, experience them, am present in them instead of observing from behind a lens. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what I needed to learn. That life isn't meant to be documented. It's meant to be lived. My camera sits in a safe. The film sits inside it. That last photograph sits undeveloped in the darkness, and that's where it's going to stay. Because I'm not a photographer anymore. I'm just a person, trying to live in the world instead of documenting it, trying to be present instead of distant, trying to help instead of observe. And that's enough. It has to be, because it's all I have left.